The candles flickered over the dinner table, soft jazz playing in the background. My mother raised her glass and said, "Here's to Elena, $80,000 for her design program in Milan." The table burst into applause. Forks clinked against plates. Everyone smiled except me. I looked down at my untouched food, then quietly asked, "And what about me?" For a moment, silence filled the room. My mother didn't even glance up. "You'll figure something out, Maya." "You always do." The words landed heavier than the silverware. My father gave a small nod as if to seal the verdict. I smiled, just to keep my voice from cracking. "Right," I whispered. "I always do." That was the night I realized, in this family, success wasn't shared. It was owned. When I was 10, birthdays meant being the extra chair in Alina's spotlight. Her cake came with cameras and praise about her gifted mind. Mine came with a used backpack and the line, "Be grateful, Maya. Independence is better than presents." I learned early how to watch others being celebrated and stay invisible. At school, I'd find comfort in the quiet, sketching designs, building small code projects, anything that gave me control. Mom called it a distraction. Dad called it a waste of time. But it was the only thing that made me feel real. One summer, I won a regional coding contest. I printed the certificate myself and showed it to Dad in the backyard while he trimmed the hedges. He squinted at it. "That's nice," he said, not looking up. "But have you thought about something that actually earns?" That line burned longer than any insult. Meanwhile, Elena was getting letters from fashion institutes. Paris, Milan, New York. Every message in the family chat began with her name. Every dinner turned into her future. By the time I left for college, I had stopped waiting for applause. That night, the dinner with the $80,000 toast was the last time I sat at that table. When Elena raised her glass and everyone clapped, I sat there smiling, memorizing every sound, every flicker of that chandelier. Because I knew one day I'd build something so solid that silence would have to applaud. Sometimes being overlooked is the best gift life gives you. Because when no one expects you to rise, you get to decide how high you'll go. The rain that night felt colder than usual. Seattle's skyline blurred through the windshield as I drove back to my small studio apartment. My phone buzzed with family messages. "Don't be dramatic. You'll regret this." I turned the phone face down. For once, silence felt like oxygen. The apartment was barely a few steps wide, white walls, one flickering bulb, and a heater that coughed more than it worked. But it was mine. I brewed instant coffee, sat on the floor with my old laptop and opened a new folder. I named it New Life. Inside, I created 3 documents. 1. Goals 2. Savings 3. Projects I didn't know where to start, but I knew what I was running from. For years, I had begged for permission to study, to dream, to exist loudly. Now I was giving myself that permission. By day, I worked at a cafe, cleaning tables and fixing the Wi-Fi whenever it crashed. By night, I coded. Small tools for small problems, delivery tracking, expense loggers, schedule apps for students like me. The hours blurred into code and caffeine. I barely spoke to anyone except Zoe, my roommate. "You're obsessed," she laughed one evening, handing me takeout. "I'm just tired of waiting for someone to believe in me," I said. She smiled softly. "Then be the first one who does." Her words stuck. A few months later, a friend of hers told me about a small logistics startup hiring part-time tech help. It was called Waypath Systems. I applied, not expecting much. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a glass office surrounded by whiteboards, sticky notes, and people who actually listened. The first time I solved a coding issue for them, the manager Kian leaned over and said, "You think differently." Don't hide that no one had ever said that to me before. That night, I stayed after hours watching the city lights reflect on the office glass. For the first time, my worth wasn't being debated. It was being built. The next morning, I deleted every family contact from my phone, not out of anger, out of clarity. I wasn't leaving them behind to prove a point. I was leaving to find one. Sometimes walking away isn't rebellion. It's self-respect. You don't have to burn bridges to build your own path. The office emptied by 7 p.m., but I always stayed. The hum of the air conditioner and the glow of my monitor became my rhythm. Every night I tested new ideas after my shift, tiny tools meant to make delivery routes faster, cleaner, more efficient. One evening, while I was debugging a new routing module, Kian walked back in. "You're still here?" he asked, balancing a coffee mug. I shrugged. "Just fixing something that doesn't like being fixed." He leaned over my screen, watching the code scroll. "You're mapping real-time routes manually?" "Kind of," I said. "If I can make the algorithm adjust based on weather and fuel logs, small businesses could save a fortune." Kian grinned. "Then let's make it official." "We'll call it Project Wayfind." That one sentence changed everything. For the next few months, I split my time between shifts and sleepless nights. We tested Wayfind with local cafes, bakeries, and florists. I cleaned data, built dashboards, and wrote reports until my eyes blurred. Every success, no matter how small, felt like reclaiming something I'd lost at that dinner table years ago. When the pilot project worked, Kian said, "You know this could be huge, right?" I smiled. "I just want it to be real." He nodded. "Then let's pitch it." The following week, I found myself sitting across from potential investors. My hands trembled as I presented slides I'd designed in the quiet hours between coding sessions. They nodded, asked questions, took notes, and then one of them said, This could redefine last-mile delivery." I didn't speak for a moment. I just stared at the graph on the screen, the one showing our efficiency jump, and realized I had built this from nothing but rejection and Wi-Fi crashes. Later that night, I sat by the window of my studio apartment, rain sliding down the glass, city lights glowing like scattered stars. My inbox pinged. A subject line reading, "Congratulations, Wayfind accepted for funding." I exhaled. Not a cheer, not a scream, just quiet gratitude. When Zoe walked in, I showed her the email. She smiled. "Guess you found your way." "Not yet," I said. "But I think I built the map." Your worth isn't measured by who applauds for you. It's built in the hours no one's watching. Every quiet effort adds up until silence itself starts to speak for you. 3 years passed like a slow sunrise, steady, bright, unstoppable. Wayfind grew from 2 laptops and a dream into a real company. We had our own floor, our own logo, and a team that believed in the impossible. My name was now printed on office doors and contracts. Maya Ellis, co-founder and CTO. I never posted about it online. I didn't buy anything flashy. The only thing I upgraded was my laptop, and even then, I kept the old one in a drawer. A reminder. Then one morning, everything changed again. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I heard the voice on the other end. "Maya, it's Elena." Her tone was trembling, thin. "I just drove past a house in Medina." "Your name's on the gate. Do you really live there?" I froze. "What are you trying to ask, Elena?" She inhaled sharply. How did you get that?" The line went dead before I could answer. Within an hour, messages started pouring in. Mom, Dad, even relatives I'd forgotten existed. All their words sounded the same, sweet concern wrapped around guilt. Mom's voicemail came first. "Elena's upset, honey. You can't let jealousy destroy the family. Call us back." Then Dad's, "Maya, we should talk as adults." We're still family, that word again. Family. It only ever appeared when they needed something. By evening, a courier arrived with a letter, cream paper, elegant handwriting. My mother's, of course. "Elena's expecting a baby. Your father's health isn't perfect. Maybe it's time to reconnect. Family supports each other, Maya. And I know you're not a cold person." I folded the letter neatly and dropped it into the trash. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. Instead, I opened my old therapy notebook, the one labelled Boundaries, and wrote a new line, greater than "They don't miss me." They miss the version of me that served their comfort. 3 days later, I sent 2 letters, one to my mother, one to my father. To Mom, greater than, if contact continues, here are my terms. No money, no guilt, no surprise visits. I don't need apologies, I need space. To Dad, greater than, you once called everything an investment. Here's my return. Freedom, he replied with a single text. Greater than meet me? Thursday, 10 a.m., Fremont Cafe. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure if I was ready, but deep down I knew it was time to close the chapter that started at that dinner table. Healing isn't about reopening old doors, it's about learning how to walk past them without needing to knock again. The cafe smelled like rain and burnt espresso. My father was already there when I arrived, same pressed coat, same heavy silence, only his eyes looked smaller, tired. You look different, he said after a long pause. Better or worse? I asked. He hesitated. Just different. We sat in that silence for a moment, the kind that holds too much history to fill. Then he sighed. Your mother was harsh, but she meant well. Parents make mistakes, I met his eyes. No, Dad. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was math, he echoed. You invested $80,000 in an image. I built value out of nothing. The difference is honesty. He didn't reply. His coffee went cold between us. I stood. You don't owe me anything. That's the point I left the cafe lighter than I'd entered. A week later came the Seattle Education Gala. Wayfind Systems was sponsoring a new scholarship for young women in STEM. The hall shimmered under gold lights, a sea of dresses and champagne. Noah squeezed my hand. You ready? Always, I said, spotting them before they saw me. Mom in pearls, Elena in soft blue, her pregnancy visible now. They smiled as if the past could be smoothed over by makeup and good lighting. Mom reached out, her tone sweet as ever. We came to congratulate you. You've done so well, Maya. But remember, true success means giving back. Elena's preparing for the baby, and your father's... I raised a hand gently. Excuse me a moment. The host nodded, and a stage assistant brought out a pearl-white envelope I had prepared earlier. I stepped to the microphone. Tonight, I'd like to make a personal contribution, $80,000 to fund scholarships for girls who were told they didn't deserve help. The room fell silent. Then applause erupted, deep, rolling, unstoppable. Under the spotlight, the check gleamed. $80,000. Maya Ellis. I turned toward my mother. You once called it an investment, I said softly. So do I. Her smile cracked. My father froze mid-step. When the applause finally faded, I walked off the stage, past their stunned faces, into the cool Seattle night. Rain began to fall, steady, cleansing, familiar. The next morning I stood barefoot on my porch overlooking the lake. My phone was silent, face down. For the first time, silence didn't mean rejection. It meant peace. Inside, my old bus pass hung framed on the wall, the one they said represented responsibility. Now it meant freedom. I opened my journal and wrote my final line. Greater than, they taught me love had to be earned. I learned peace never does. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's no longer needing to. Because real success isn't loud. It's the sound of peace after the storm.